Now, whenever you do shows like this, you make a call sometimes on the stories that annoy you and you want to ignore them, but you know that if you ignore them, then the crazies get to write the narrative. So I have to engage again with the over-the-top reaction to text messages from 2 years ago. Now remember, 2 years ago. Now who knows if it's a state or federal lib? Frankly, the rats are always in the ranks. And somebody is trying to do the Prime Minister nice and slowly, just like they tried to do Tony Abbott before. But I've got to say, there are the types of people that I'm really looking to for this election about which way they're starting to lead, and they're the people who don't talk to the fully politically engaged like you and I. They're not the people who are filling Twitter, and they're not writing pieces for The Guardian. Enter the great Kyle Sandilands. He's got about 1 million listeners at least around the country, and today he thought this story was garbage.
No one's seen it. Even if it is true, it doesn't mean Gladys thinks he's horrible. Well, he could be a horrible person. No, you didn't. I said it.
I said that she might have...
Join. Do the show by yourself. What a show it'll be.
We want you, Kyle.
Brilliant. There's a reason he's been number one for 20 years and will be for another 20 years to come. But also, something that we always talk about on this show that's about how Channel 2 works, how the ABC works. Now, often they're biased by omission, but every now and then they actually are able to give us apples to compare with apples, oranges to compare with oranges. And I want to show you the exact example of how clearly the reporter is picking the side that they like. This was the question that Andrew Probyn, their chief political person on the 7pm news, asked Each Way Albo.
Who is Anthony Albanese?
But this was the question that he asked Scott Morrison.
Why are you the best person to lead the coalition to the next election?
I wonder who he'll be voting for when the polls open in Canberra. But I want to also show you this. Now, Channel 2, of course, always sort of moves as one big blob at a time, and then eventually stories end up being they're 100% right and people on this channel are 100% wrong. The reality is, well, always somewhere in the middle. But I wanted to show you about the 7:30 report last night. Now, remember, these are taxpayer-funded journalists who are supposed to just call it down the middle. But how's this for cooking it clearly to the left? Here was part of what Laura Tingle did on the 7:30 report last night.
PM too must be lying awake at night wondering if it will be okay. Not just the outlook for the economy, but for his own future and that of the government. This poll crystallised all the frustrations and anger of the summer with the government on Omicron, rat tests, collapsing supply chains and a crisis in aged care.
Sounds like an editorial, more than just a straight reporting. Not just what is the poll, but what does the poll mean? Why does the poll go the way that it currently does? You see, they get the chance to, kind of dare I say, each way this. They get all the awards for being independent journalists, but they get plenty of airtime to be able to show you what they believe. Now, I don't mind the idea of somebody being honest about their opinion, but you don't get to sit in both columns. But alas, such is the way that that collective works. But again, the 7:30 report last night and the objective reporting of lovely Laura Tingle.
But do you want to take this opportunity to actually say sorry for the mistakes you've made as Prime Minister?
We're all terribly sorry for what this pandemic has done to the world and to this country.
Now, that's what viewers on her show saw last night. But have a look at the actual tape and the bit that she decided to cut out of that exchange, the bit when everyone in the room laughed at her question.
Do you want to take this opportunity to actually say sorry for the mistakes you've made as Prime Minister? Not just about COVID, everything from going to Hawaii during the bushfires through to not having enough rapid antigen tests in place, even as you foreshadowed the switch to a greater use of them, and for failing to live up to your pledge to hundreds of thousands of people on the NDIS that you would make sure the scheme was fully funded, uncapped and demand-driven. And will you apologise to people who've had, the hundreds of people who've had funding arbitrarily cut under the scheme?
Well, thanks for the question.
That bit, of course, missing. Instead, it was just Lefty Laura holding the evil Liberal Prime Minister to account. But again, have a look at her straight down the line reporting of the Prime Minister's speech that we told you about in such detail last night. Again, every opportunity she has to spin, to twist and to put a narrative on it, well, I'll let her show you.
The Prime Minister spoke for a long 40 minutes today before taking questions. He seemed to feel he had a lot of ground to make up, a lot of fires to put out, though the commitment to harnessing the power of universities' research for commercial purposes sits uncomfortably with the government's record of limiting their access to JobKeeper, a decision which coincided with the loss of thousands of university jobs. Despite the bullish prediction, today's speech showed the Prime Minister beginning the year on a very defensive note, unlike the opposition leader, who spoke at the same venue last week.
Australia can emerge from this once-in-a-century crisis better, stronger, more fair and more prosperous. It requires leadership that brings Australians together.
And just in case it wasn't very, very clear to everyone who was paying attention last night at 7:30 on Channel 2, well, she went into the full advertising mode for the Labor Party leader. Remember, this was supposed to be analysis of the Prime Minister's speech, yet she talks about the alternative Prime Minister's speech uncritically a week earlier. Same report last night.
Last week, unencumbered by the problems now facing the government, he was able to set out a broad, if undetailed, agenda with a commitment to the public health system at its heart.
Protecting the health of Australians will be a defining issue in the upcoming election, and a critical choice will be this: who do you trust to keep Medicare safe? Only Labor will protect Medicare.
It was a simple and again undetailed statement, but one which was a reminder that health and education are two areas that are traditionally Labor's strong points, and they are now front and centre of the national political contest in an era of COVID. Gone are the complex tax changes which scared many voters in 2019. Albanese has a short list of priorities that also includes addressing insecure work, rebuilding the TAFE system, boosting local manufacture, supporting a high-quality NBN and affordable childcare.
Seriously, that was her analysis of the Prime Minister's speech, was to spend half of it talking about Albo and doing an ad for the Labor Party. Yet no doubt on Monday night when they pass judgment about the good guys and the bad guys of the week, Lefty Laura will be completely let off.